Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Heat Check. I am John Devine. This is Anthony Chang. Since we have nothing going on today, I think we'll talk about the Orange Bowl between Notre Dame and Penn State. Who you got going?
I like Notre Dame. Their run defense is really good, so I'm going to go with Notre
Nobody
Dame.
cares. Nobody cares. I think this will not be all Jimmy all the time, but it'll be most of it. It has been a little bit because we've also had the holidays. But Anthony, just catch us up. Let us know where the impasse is. I know recently we said, hey, let's put it this way. When we left here, the stance was we're not trading Jimmy, right?
Yeah.
Riley said, I don't care what you said, we're not trading Jimmy. Let's start with what changed and then where we are up until this point on Thursday morning.
Yeah, it all changed last week when Jimmy came back from the illness. He played in 2 games. His first game he had 9 points. Some people were saying that didn't look like he was really trying, although that's subjective. It was his first game back in a couple weeks, but he was passive. He was just like kind of running to the corner, giving the ball up, not aggressive. They played again the next night. It was a home back-to-back. Again, 9 points. Not a big part of the offense. Didn't play in the fourth quarter in either of those games. Was kind of benched in the fourth quarter of those games, which is very strange, obviously, for your best player, max player, to not play late in the game, even if he is coming back from an illness. So then after the Pacers game, he speaks to the media in the interview room at Kaseya Center, and we're asking him, has he felt healthy? Has he felt like himself? He doesn't look like himself on the court. He basically said he's lost his joy from playing basketball. That's his job now with the Heat, is just to kind of go to the corner and stand there and not really have the ball in his hands. And his job is just to defend and make effort, like just be a try-hard player. Tim Reynolds from the Associated Press asked him, do you believe you can get your joy back while still playing for the Heat? He said probably not. And that's where the press conference ended. And I think all of us were stunned because, yes, we've seen this kind of building up now for the last month about all these leaks, and we know he wants an extension. He's not exactly super happy with the Heat. But for him to publicly, basically, without directly saying it, to say, I kind of want to trade, I don't really want to be here anymore, was surprising, right? You don't see that happen much for the Heat. You see the Heat capitalize on that, right, in their past, with whether it's Damian Lillard, which they didn't get, but Kevin Durant one time put the Heat on his preferred trade list, but you never see a player do that to the Heat. So it was surprising. The next day, we're all like, what are they going to do? Is he just going to play in the next game after all this? Are they going to tell him to be away from the team? Are they going to suspend him? They eventually, later that day, suspend him for 7 games without pay, losing about $2.5 million with that suspension, although he will fight that and try to get some of that money back. And the Heat say conduct detrimental to the team, and that since he has made it clear that he doesn't want to play for the Heat anymore, they will start listening to trade offers. So that's a change in their stance from the last time we spoke, John, about them saying we're not going to trade Jimmy. Now they're listening to trade offers. And since then, obviously, Jimmy's been away. The Heat are 1-2 in his absence since he was suspended. And there have been developments along the way, obviously. We broke the news on Sunday night, late Sunday night at 11, that if there is no trade before the end of the suspension, the Heat will expect Jimmy to return to the team and play in games, which I think, yeah, you would say, suspension. Obviously, that's common sense. When the suspension's over, he's going to play again. But because of the way everything unfolded, I think the thought was his Heat career is over. Whether he's traded or not, like, he's not going to come back to this team. How could he? It's so ugly. The Heat say we're gonna listen to trade offers. At the very least, you pay him to stay away from the team, but that is not the case. They want him. They don't want to do that. They're not interested in paying him, $50 million for the season for him just to stay home. They want him to play in games. So if there is no trade in a week, that's where we're saying right now. It doesn't look like there's anything close. It's been really nothing serious, no serious conversations up to this point. If that continues on Friday, when the Heat returns home from this trip to host the Denver Nuggets, I think Jimmy Butler will be in uniform and probably play in that game.
That's crazy.
It is crazy. It is
like
crazy.
It's like those people get a divorce and then they still live in the same house, and then they go in the middle. And they go, okay, this side is mine and this side is mine, but we still live in the same house. I don't know how it's gonna last.
It's gonna be awkward, I think, and I get I get both sides. I get the Heat saying like we're not gonna just trade you because we want for the sake of it because we want to avoid this mess. We're gonna try to maximize our return, and if that means we have to wait till closer to the deadline, or heck, if we have to wait till this off season, right, to figure out what's gonna happen, that might be the case. But I also get Jimmy Butler's point of view of like, you're really gonna bring me back after all this? Like after all this, you're gonna expect me to come back? This is untenable. We can't do this. This is not gonna be good for me. This is not gonna be good for the team. Not gonna be good for the coaching staff. With just this looming over the team all year. So I understand both sides. But again, as of right now, there really isn't a clear. It seems like Jimmy wants to be in Phoenix, right? It seems like Jimmy wants to be in Phoenix. It seems like Phoenix is the team that really wants him the most. The problem is because they're in the second apron, the only way that could work is if they either trade Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, or Bradley Beal. They're not trading Kevin Durant or Devin Booker. So it comes down to Bradley Beal. The Heat do not want Bradley Beal. He has a no trade clause. They didn't want him 2 years ago when he left when he was the Wizards traded him, right? They didn't want to acquire his no trade clause. Since then, Bradley Beal has been injured. Not exactly the same player that was in Washington, older. The Heat still do not want Bradley Beal. So the challenge in all this is to make a deal work is to find a third or even fourth team that wants Bradley Beal and is okay with that no trade clause, is okay with taking 2 more years left on his contract for $110 million. Then Bradley Beal has to approve of the trade. Even if you finally say the Pistons say, yeah, we'll take Bradley Beal. Why not? If Bradley Beal says, no, I don't want to go there, deal's off. He has a no trade clause. On top of all those things, then that team, whoever takes Bradley Beal, will need to send good enough assets to the Heat to make them want to do the trade. So it is yes, it seems like, okay, he wants to go to Phoenix. Phoenix wants him. Make it happen. There's a reason why it hasn't happened yet, and there hasn't really been anything close. Because to make all those things line up, I don't want to say it's impossible. Obviously, it's possible, but it's very, very difficult.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, Bradley Beal in the past week or so, they've also been bringing him off the bench. Do you think they're doing that to tick him off enough to say, screw it, I'm out of here? Or with all his injury history? Or do you think there are games within games? And humor me, who's the general manager of the Suns these days?
I think he's related to Bradley Beal's agent. The general manager is James Jones, but there is someone, he's either assistant general manager or he's high up, that I think is the son of Bradley Beal's agent, which is another twist in this whole thing, where Bradley Beal's agent is related to a higher up in the Phoenix Suns, where, it's a very interesting situation. But yes, to your point, James Jones is the GM of the Suns, so there's a connection there with the Heat for sure.
Okay, so this is, those conspiracy theory memes where you see the guy and he's pointing everywhere and he's got like map in the back. That's how this feels. This whole first and second apron is doing exactly what it's intended to do. That I get, which is restrict, don't go way over this cap, and then you still have the freedom to do whatever you want to do. So if anything else, that's doing what it's supposed to do, but it stinks for people who want to see movement in the NBA. I know they talked about Golden State for a while. I haven't heard Golden State's name pop up lately. And then you had a story the other day on Jimmy's like no to Memphis. You want to expound on that a little bit about why not Memphis? It seems like Memphis is a good young team. So why wouldn't he want to go to Memphis?
Yeah, Memphis with Jimmy Butler. If they're keeping Bane and they're keeping Ja and they're keeping Jaren Jackson, I mean that's a title contender right there, right? You would think to win, if he really wants to win, I mean that's a good spot to be in. But I think this all comes down to the extension. Which team is going to give him that money? This is what it's all about, right? We could talk about role, we could talk about joy, we could talk about whatever you want to talk about. This is about the extension. If Jimmy would have gotten the extension in the summer, when he was eligible for it, from the Heat, we would not be having an issue right now. And I think any team he's traded to, he's going to want some commitment of when we can sign to that extension, we will give you the max extension. I don't know. Maybe Memphis didn't commit to that, and that's why it was made clear that he doesn't want to be traded there. Maybe he doesn't want to live in Memphis. I don't know the exact reason. But I think Phoenix, not only is Phoenix a good situation from a basketball point of view, playing with Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, right? Going to be a pretty good team, even though they're struggling right now. But with Jimmy on that roster, I think obviously he makes them better. But their owner is known to spend money, their new owner, Matt Ishbia. And they kind of are locked into their roster because of their second apron situation. So you don't really have, like, you're not going to get anybody better than Jimmy, right? Because you can't because of your salary cap. So you're probably going to give him the extension because that's the way to keep him. So I think that's one of the big reasons that Jimmy probably wants to be in Phoenix, would not mind being in Phoenix, because this comes back to that contract. He feels like he deserves that contract. He's looking where he can get that contract, and it seems like Phoenix just by connecting the dots of how Phoenix has been pushing so hard for Jimmy, it seems like they'd be willing to give him that deal.
So you and Charles Barkley have a lot in common on how you feel about this. You didn't quite say it as eloquently as Charles Barkley. Of course, they also didn't push the bleep button in time for him. But that's okay. So, all right.
Do you want me to curse on the podcast, John?
Sure, go ahead. This is total. So we're getting to that. Let's say we get to Friday. We get to that Friday. 7 games are over. We have seen, and we talk about story ideas, but we have seen what Jimmy will do to get out of a place. Yeah. We see what Pat Riley will do when he's done with you. Let's start with each side. How much further do you think Jimmy can take this before he gets what he wants?
I don't know.
We saw Minnesota.
I don't know, because obviously Jimmy doesn't want to lose more money, right? And now that they've already ripped off the Band-Aid and suspended him once, they're kind of, by bringing him back, they're basically daring Jimmy of, come play. If you don't come report to the team, then that's breach of contract and you will lose more money. If you come back to the team and, it's conduct detrimental to the team, or you miss practice, or you miss shoot-arounds, or you don't go to a team meeting, or you take yourself out of a game, like Tyreek Hill, then we can suspend you again, right? So they're almost daring Jimmy of, like, we know you'd rather not be back here. We know you want to be somewhere else, but if you want to get paid this season, then you're going to have to come back and do your job. So, yes, Jimmy is known to make it a big mess, right? He's done it in other places to kind of get what he wants, and it's been messy already. But if he continues to push the envelope, and this is not even, right, this is not all him. Like, this has been kind of, both sides have made mistakes in this. I would say I'm not going to blame it all on Jimmy, but he is the player in the team-player relationship, and he is the one that is getting paid here. So if he wants to make that money, he's going to have to do his job. So that's where, yes, he could continue to push the limits and kind of raise the heat on the Heat and put pressure on the Heat, but then he risks another suspension without pay.
So mess around and find out, because
pretty much
this is a family podcast. We're going to put it that way.
Pretty much.
Now let's look at Pat Riley's side. There's going to be a significant group of people who go, it's good. We have the first and second apron scenarios now. We need to be fiscally responsible. This is a man who's 35 years old. You are paying for what he has done, not what he's going to do. You have that side. Then you have another side that's saying, look, it was messy with Shaq back in the day. It was messy with Zoe after he came back and they won the title. Hey, even Dwayne Wade left for a year and a half and came back. Do you think you can consistently lure top players if, when they know they hit 34, 35, and they are either at the end of their prime or on their way down, that they're not going to get the money that they want?
I mean, that's a fair argument. They always come back though, right? I mean, Shaq is now working like as a fun ambassador for Carnival Cruise Line.
Mhm.
Dwayne came back, has a statue. Zoe
Not
obviously
even a
works for
statue.
the team.
Not even
What?
a statue.
Well,
But
it's a
see, you get
statue, whether you like it or not. Yeah. Zoe is a high-ranking official in the Heat organization, so they always come back. Um, and maybe one day Jimmy will be back, although it seems so hard to imagine right now with the way things look. But uh, look, Jimmy lifted this organization from, I don't want to say irrelevance, but definitely mediocrity. Um, they were, after Dwayne left in 2016, those Hassan Whiteside, Dion Waiters,
ugh,
James Johnson years, Justice Winslow. I mean, fun
Justice,
team
not Justice Winslow. Justice Winslow instead of Devin Booker.
instead of Devin Booker.
That's what makes
Yes,
it even worse.
like that team. That was a not a great era of Heat basketball. Just a mediocre era, not a contender. You get Jimmy Butler in a sign and trade for pretty much nothing. You had no cap space. You found a way to get him because you wanted to be here, and he carried you, right? Carried you to 2 NBA Finals appearances, 4 Eastern Conference Finals appearances. You never were really able to get him another star on the roster. You already had Bam, obviously, but you never get that third star. Tyler Hero, some will say now is turning into that, but we'll see. But you never get like a Dame or Kevin Durant, right? That was always the goal. And that, they tried. They were always in the running. They tried. It's never materialized. Um, and I think Jimmy feels like at this point, he wants to get paid. They're not giving it to him, and he feels like he deserves it because of what he did for this team. And B, he doesn't feel like he can probably win a championship here at this point. Like this roster, you've lost Max Strus, you lost Gabe Vincent, you lost Caleb Martin, Kyle Lowry. Obviously, you traded away. There's kind of been a talent drain here. Yeah, you've replaced it with some draft picks that have upside, but right now for this season, it doesn't seem like the Heat are a title contender. I don't think anybody would say they're a title contender. Are they a playoff team if Jimmy's there? Of course. But are they a title contender? They're not on that list. So to get to back to your point of your question about Pat Riley, I think we've seen Pat. Yes, it's ended ugly for for with some guys, but he has always found a way to acquire the next star, whether it be Jimmy with LeBron. People point to LeBron. LeBron was probably leaving before Pat even challenged him. I think that was more Pat knowing LeBron was gone and saying, "This is my last. Like, I got to try Hail Mary here. Let me see if I call him out in the press conference. See if that like maybe gets him to stay." Didn't work. Dwayne, you could argue that he made the right decision, although losing your franchise icon is never great. He came back on a minimum contract, right? And when he was in Chicago, he pitched Jimmy on coming to the Heat. That's kind of why Jimmy came to the Heat. He said, "You're gonna be that's gonna be a perfect place for you. Their culture, you fit it." So that worked out for the Heat. Shaq was at the end of his career, right? He went to Phoenix, was never the same guy.
The big
So yeah, exactly. Big cactus. I like that. Yeah. And then went to Boston. Remember those Boston year? That last Boston year, it was weird. Even played with LeBron in Cleveland after that. But yeah, it's not great, but those decisions, you could argue, they've been the right ones. Hasn't been fun to go through for the Heat, I'm sure, but you can argue those decisions have been the right ones, and you could argue this decision. While it's right now the team is not going to be better if they lose Jimmy. If they can get a first round pick and a couple young players for him, long term, probably not the worst decision, right? So to your
well,
point, I
let's be
think,
honest.
yeah,
Pat Riley, if you get a first round, if he gets a first round pick back for him, you and I both know Pat Riley's probably going to use that first round pick so that he can go whale hunting some more.
for
And
sure.
it's not going to be, I think we're going to get a top 10 pick and we're going to get another Dwayne Wade. Look, Dwayne Wade being picked by this team was one of the craziest. I mean, just because the Heat is committed to doing as best they can whenever they can. So the chances of them going number 5 again are going to be slim because they're not going to tank. We know they're not going to tank. And that's very admirable for an organization to have that mindset. But you fall sometimes out of that. So now if you're worst case 10, 12, 15, you're really rolling the dice, like we said with Justice Winslow versus Devin Booker. You don't know what you're going to get. So he's going to probably pour that resource. And you and I both know, like, when it comes to first-round picks, you can only deal so many in a row because you have to have a first-round pick every few years. So in this case, it gives him a chance to do that and deal in the future.
Yeah, I think that any trade that's made involving Jimmy Butler, I think it is with the thinking of how does this set us up for the next trade? How does this, because in today's NBA, yes, you can say I want to, the Heat used to be like, we're going to save cap space for this summer because we want to go after this guy. Mm-hmm. The NBA landscape has changed now, right? Because the CBA now incentivizes players to stay with their team by basically allowing them to sign for more money, more years with their current team. Most of the stars aren't hitting free agency. What happens is they sign that extension, and then like Damian Lillard or James Harden or whoever, like then they ask for a trade after they sign that extension. So you have to have assets to be able to land those players. That's picks, that's good young players, expiring contracts, and the Heat have never been great at that, like you said, because they're always chasing like right now. They're giving up a first-round pick for Terry Rozier.
Right.
They're giving up. So they have one tradable, unprotected first-round pick they can trade right now. For perspective, I think Mikal Bridges, like he fetched 5 first-round picks or 3 first-round picks. You can't compete with Oklahoma City, who has like 20 first-round picks in the next 10 years, and Brooklyn. Yeah, the Nets. Like it's you can't compete. So I'm not saying. Yeah, I know you, man. So that's the challenge for them right now is they have to start collecting assets to be able to, next time a player asks for a trade to the Heat, let's say De'Aaron Fox, hypothetically, this has not happened, but hypothetically De'Aaron Fox in a year says, I want to be traded to Miami. And Sacramento goes to the Heat, well, what do you have? What can you give us? And you're like, well, we have 1 first-round pick. That's not going to work. So they have to start collecting assets. And I think, again, that's why they're looking to maximize this Jimmy Butler trade, is because this is their way to stack some chips. And I don't think they're going to do it if they're not able to do that. They'll wait until the offseason, which again, that will be messy, right? The question is, how do you get to the offseason with this situation, right? It's not great. But the Heat are okay being uncomfortable. We know that. And Jimmy Butler is okay being uncomfortable. He does not care. Even though as much as he probably wants to be somewhere else, he'll do it. It'll be awkward. And the season will probably be torpedoed by the whole thing. But again, I don't think either side's going to give in.
It's funny. You mentioned the season. So they played 3 games without him. They blew 1 game. Well, did they blow one or both of them? I forget. I know they blew a 17-point lead in one.
They blew one of them. The first game they got blown out by the Jazz by like 40 points or 30 points.
And the great Bryce Sensabaugh.
Yes.
So they were blown out by like a 7-25 team at the time. They blew a 17-point lead, and then they held off Golden State, which isn't Golden State prime Splash Brothers, but they still held off a pretty decent team in Golden State.
Second out of a back-to-back too, so that was impressive.
So we're looking to see, and they're trying to get their get back tonight in Utah.
Yeah.
What is it with us in Utah? Because the Panthers played in Utah last night.
I saw that. Yeah.
But you look at those things. We saw Khalil Ware had a big game. Triple J had, I called him that. He had a triple-double. Mm-hmm. And even Niko Jovic had a good game. Do you see them, even as we're talking about what the next move is for the Heat? Does it feel like they're being showcased on what they can do with an expanded role, or showcased in case they need to be put in one of these trade pieces?
I just think the Heat are leaning young right now, right? With Jimmy Butler off the roster, not off the roster. Let me rephrase that. With Jimmy Butler suspended and away from the team, they're not showcasing for a trade, but just it's opened doors for these younger players to get more minutes. Now Jaime Jaquez is kind of playing in that Jimmy Butler role. He's starting 2 straight starts. I think he has 6 starts all season. He got a triple-double, to your point, in Sacramento. He had 18 points in the win against Golden State. Nikola Jovic is playing off the bench, but he's playing a bigger role. He played 34 minutes against Golden State. He had a season-high 20 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists. The Heat have some good young players. They really do. I mean, it's not, are they superstars? No, but Nikola Jovic is 21 years old. See a 21-year-old getting 20 points, 6 rebounds, and 4 assists against Golden State. That's pretty good.
And how long has he been here? It's like he's 21. It feels like he's been here like forever, and he's still just like the same thing with Hero. Hero's been here forever. It's like 24, 25 soon. It's like
I know. It feels like Hero's been like 10 years already.
Yep.
I mean, I think they both got drafted at 19. That's why. And same thing with Khalil Ware, where I think he's 19 or maybe 20 now. But I think got drafted at 19. Playing is now the backup center consistently. Kevin Love is out of the rotation. He's getting minutes. Is it perfect, his minutes? No, but you're seeing the flashes, the rim protection, playing as a lob threat, has hit a bunch of threes already. Needs to improve his rebounding. But he's getting better, and this experience is important for him. So I think it's been fun to watch the young guys get a bigger leash where they're able to go out there and play extended minutes and not have to worry about, well, if I miss a shot, I'm gonna be pulled from the rotation. Like, no, the Heat are playing this because they kind of have to at this point. Josh Richardson's out. Jimmy Butler's not with the team. Drew Smith who was playing 30+ minutes before he got injured, is out for the season. So they're being, these young guys are getting a chance. The one who was in the rotation earlier this season is Paula Larson, the second-round pick from last year's draft. He was playing consistent minutes early on in the season, kind of dropped out of the rotation. But as you and I have said in the past, we know Spo. He'll change it from one game to the next. One guy will be out of the rotation. All of a sudden, he's playing 25 minutes. We've seen it with Jovic this year, right? Jovic started the season as a starter, didn't play for like 5 to 7 games, was out of the rotation, and now again, he's a big part of the rotation. So, I think that's been one of the bright spots in this kind of weird, turbulent time for the Heat. The young guys have looked good.
It is funny to say that, but it's also, if you're watching these games, you watch these guys, it is fun to see that we have such different skill sets in these games now.
Yeah.
And how Spo is utilizing. You're right. I mean, you have Jaime Jaquez Jr. in there. And offensively, you can kind of see that there are similarities in how they play. It's not a big three-point threat, but, you can get somewhere in the mid-range game and you can play off of it. But now you've got 2 big guys who you have rim protection to go along with Bam, which you didn't usually have. That's Ware, not Jovic, let's be honest. Any protection you get from Jovic at this point is a bonus. But you've got 2 really big guys who can go up there. They can go get lobs. They can do things a little bit further down. They can shoot. They can draw their guys out. And it gives room to operate for if you had a happy, healthy Jimmy, which I know. But even someone like Jaime Jaquez Jr. or Highsmith, so that they can go to the hole. It's just a little bit different variation of what we've had before. So if you're gonna be stuck in this middle ground and slog through, you may as well be interesting, because the only thing worse than being mediocre is being dull.
Yeah.
And this keeps them from being dull.
For sure. That if Jimmy Butler is traded, the biggest story with this team will be, obviously people want to watch Bam and Tyler, and Tyler's going to be in the running probably for most improved player of the year. Could be an all-star this season, but it should be. The intrigue is going to be about the young guys, because that's kind of the unknown of what can they be? What can they do with this extra, added playing time? What can Nikola Jovic as a 21-year-old, almost 7-footer who has great passing skills, is a good shooter, is getting better at posting up, has gotten better as a defender. What can he become? What could Jaime Jaquez become as a starter, right? Being used in that role, as opposed to when Jimmy's playing, Jaime's more of a spot-up shooter, and that's not his game. We know that. He's not a great three-point shooter. Right. So now he's being played to his strengths. He has a triple-double again. He has 18 points the last game. So these are all good things. Again, I'm not saying if Jimmy is traded, this team is not going to be better than it is right now, right? There's no scenario, I guess, unless we get shocked and Kevin Durant is asked for a trade from Phoenix and they trade Jimmy for Kevin Durant straight up. Maybe you can make the argument that the Heat is better with Kevin Durant. That's fine. But I would say 99% chance if you trade Jimmy in the short term, you're going to be a worse team. That's just the way it's going to be. but it's for the future.
If you can't sell championships, which at this point we've been having this whole conversation that this is not a championship roster constructed.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to sell hope.
Yep.
And if you're going to make this trade, you got to have people, even people like us talking, going, here's the path where I can see them getting markedly better. Here are the people who can ride the next wave. Look, when post Dwayne Wade, we were talking, and you remember this, I'm sure. You know, the first half of one season, they were like 11 and whatever. And then the second half, they ended up being like 500. And it was like, I think they were 11 and 30, and then 30 and 11 at the end. It's like, look, and Riley in the front office threw money at all these guys, Whiteside, James Johnson, all these guys. And then you looked at it the next couple of years, and you're like, yeah, this ain't gonna work. But now you're saddled with these contracts. So if you're gonna do it, go young and go with the growth pains that you could have, because when those contracts end, you can do something about it.
Sure. And one thing I want to point out before we end the episode, 2026 is a really interesting offseason. As of right now, as we know, things change. Guys sign extensions. Guys sign new contracts. They don't end up becoming free agents. But 2026, the free agent class at this point is going to be loaded. And that is one of the reasons the Heat, does not want to give Jimmy Butler an extension, because if you give Jimmy Butler an extension, all of a sudden, what appears like they're on track to have a max slot open, even with Bam on the roster. We'll see what happens with Tyler and his extension. He's eligible for an extension this year. But even with those two guys in the roster, they could have a max slot. And in that class, you're going to have guys like, possibly, if they don't sign an extension before then, Luka, Shea, De'Aaron Fox, not the same class, but Porzingis, Trae Young, even Dame has a player option that year, which I know will be older, but it's a really good free agent class with, again, the guys headlining are Luka and probably Shea. Those are like the generational talents in that class. But if you can get a guy like that, if the Heat think they have a chance, that's why they're hoarding cap space, and they don't want, in any trade, they don't, unless it's for a really, an all-star, top-end all-star player, they're not looking to add contracts to their roster in a trade that would eat up into that space in 2026. Right. So that's why it's really hard to pull off a trade, because they kind of want everything, right? They want someone that can help them now, but they want someone that does not take up cap space in 2026. They want picks. So it's very, they're looking for a very specific type of thing. But yeah, just keep on, and Barry Jackson actually just posted a story on this that we're talking about how 2026 plays into everything that's going on right now. Keep an eye on the 2026 class, because I really do think he'd have their eye on that.
Well, look, this franchise has successfully threaded this needle before. I mean, they set up for the Big Three era about a little more than 10 years ago, and they planned for it, and they were able to pounce and take advantage of it. So don't think Andy Ellsberg, Pat Riley, and company can't do that again. So
they know what they're doing, for sure.
Whether we have patience. We say 2026, we look at, hey, it's 2025, it's a year off. But then when we go through the day-to-day of the season, fans and pundits and everybody's like, oh, it's so long. So, they're playing the long game. Everyone's like, oh, Pat Riley's 80. Pat Riley still has his eyes on what he has his eyes on. I don't think he wants to go anywhere without going out a winner. And I don't blame him, because if you've had a career like that, why not go out that way? So
yeah,
we look forward to seeing it. We've got more games coming up. Let's keep an eye on these young guys. We will be right here for every step of this Jimmy saga, because we know it's not going to just be cut and dried. But as soon as we hear something, we'll share it with you guys. Please follow Anthony Chang at MiamiHerald.com, on X, all over the place. He's everywhere. Barry Jackson will be nearby. He'll be descending in to help. We have a team of people here at the Miami Herald. Lock in with us. Stay with us. Thank you for your support ahead of time. You can hit like and subscribe here on Miami Herald YouTube page. And until next time, I'm John Devine. This is Anthony Chang. We'll see you next time.